Elizabeth, a nurse in her late 20s, is returning home after a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital. Exhausted and longing for sleep, she walks along a quiet street illuminated by dim streetlights. The silence is abruptly broken by the screech of tires, the crunch of metal, and a loud crash. Alarmed, she turns toward the source of the noise and sees a flipped car in the distance, smoke rising ominously from it. Without hesitation, Elizabeth rushes to the scene, her medical instincts overriding her fatigue. The air is thick with tension as a few bystanders gather at a safe distance, too frightened to approach. Elizabeth's eyes scan the wreckage and notice movement inside the car. She peers through the shattered window and spots a woman in her 60s, unconscious and bleeding, her leg trapped under the dashboard. The car's engine hisses ominously, a warning of potential explosion. Despite the risk, Elizabeth calls out to the woman and begins assessing her condition. She tries to open the door, but it's jammed. Her hands tremble as she pulls and tugs with all her strength, yet the door won't budge. The bystanders shout warnings to keep away, but Elizabeth ignores them, determined to save the woman. The urgency of the situation intensifies as the hissing engine grows louder, and the smell of gasoline fills the air. Elizabeth's mind races, knowing she doesn't have much time. She grabs a metal rod lying nearby and uses it to pry the door open. With a loud creak, the door gives way. Elizabeth carefully crawls into the car, mindful of broken glass and jagged edges. She assesses the woman's injuries. There's a deep gash on her forehead, her breathing is shallow, and her leg is wedged tightly under the crumpled dashboard. Elizabeth talks to her, urging her to stay awake and assuring her that help is on the way. With great effort, Elizabeth shifts the dashboard slightly, freeing the woman's leg. Her muscles ache, and her sweat mixes with the blood on her hands. She gently pulls the woman out of the car, shielding her from sharp debris. Outside, the bystanders remain frozen, murmuring among themselves but offering no help. As Elizabeth lays the woman on the ground, she checks her vitals and tears a piece of her uniform to create a makeshift bandage for the head wound. The car behind her groans ominously, and she hears the crackling sound of flames. Her heart pounds as she realizes the vehicle is moments away from exploding. Just as Elizabeth drags the injured woman to a safe distance, a deafening explosion shatters the night. The force of the blast knocks Elizabeth to the ground, shielding the woman with her own body. Flames shoot into the sky, illuminating the shocked faces of the bystanders. Elizabeth coughs and pulls herself up, ignoring the stinging cuts on her arms. She checks on the woman, who remains unconscious but stable. Elizabeth's phone is dead, so she shouts at the onlookers, demanding someone call for an ambulance. Her voice is firm and commanding, finally snapping a young man into action. He dials emergency services while Elizabeth continues tending to the woman. The ambulance arrives within minutes, accompanied by the police. The paramedics take over, and Elizabeth gives them a detailed account of the injuries and the events leading up to the rescue. As the woman is loaded onto the stretcher, one of the paramedics praises Elizabeth's bravery. The police take Elizabeth's statement and assure her that her actions saved a life. Exhausted and shaken, she watches the ambulance disappear down the road before heading home, her mind replaying the harrowing events of the night. The following morning, Elizabeth wakes up to the sound of a loud knock on her door. She opens it to find two police officers standing there. Her heart skips a beat, wondering if something went wrong with the woman she saved. The officers introduce themselves and inform Elizabeth that they're here to deliver a message from the injured woman's family. Confused but curious, she invites them inside. One of the officers explains that the woman, identified as Margaret Lancaster, is a well-known millionaire and philanthropist. She was deeply moved by Elizabeth's bravery and wanted to meet her personally once she recovers. The officers also inform Elizabeth that the woman's family wants to express their gratitude. They hand her an envelope containing a letter of thanks and a substantial check. Overwhelmed, Elizabeth tries to refuse the money, insisting she acted out of duty and compassion. However, the officers gently insist, saying the family would be honored if she accepted it. A few days later, Elizabeth is invited to visit Margaret at the hospital. Nervous yet curious, she arrives to find a frail but smiling Margaret sitting upright in her bed. Margaret thanks Elizabeth profusely, tears streaming down her face as she recounts the moment she thought she was going to die. The two women talk for hours, bonding over their shared experience and life stories. Margaret learns about Elizabeth's struggles as a nurse, including the long hours and the financial burdens she carries. Moved by her selflessness, Margaret promises to help her in any way she can. Before Elizabeth leaves, Margaret's lawyer approaches her with a legal document. Margaret wishes to set up a scholarship fund in Elizabeth's name, dedicated to supporting aspiring nurses. Shocked and humbled, Elizabeth agrees, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Elizabeth's story spreads quickly, capturing the attention of local news outlets. Her courageous act inspires many in her community, leading to increased awareness about the importance of helping others in emergencies. Margaret keeps her promise, not only establishing the scholarship fund, but also supporting Elizabeth's career advancement. Elizabeth is offered opportunities to work in better-equipped hospitals, allowing her to grow professionally. The bond between Elizabeth and Margaret blossoms into a genuine friendship. Elizabeth often reflects on how a single act of bravery changed her life forever, reminding her that even in the darkest moments, selflessness and compassion can lead to extraordinary outcomes. This is a life story follows Elizabeth, an exhausted nurse who risks her life to save an injured millionaire, Margaret Lancaster, from a burning car. Her bravery earns her gratitude, financial support, and opportunities to advance her career. Margaret establishes a scholarship in Elizabeth's name, inspiring a ripple effect of kindness in their community. Through this life-changing experience, Elizabeth learns the value of selflessness and the power of human connection.